something more to be said about the Trump assassination attempt before I think I'll leave this subject behind and probably leave presidential politics behind for good. Again, it's not something that I'm interested in covering. It's something that I'm more interested in ignoring, because I just don't see the point of following it unless you find it interesting and it does something for you. Then follow it by all means. But it does nothing for me. It does worse than nothing for me. So, but I am interested in the fact that things aren't the way they've been promoted to be, which is to say, I am a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, have been for several years now. I don't believe the official stories of things like the JFK assassination or 9/11 or various other things. And I wanted to point out that with this latest event, the effort to kill Trump in rural Pennsylvania, I wanted to take note of certain things, or maybe one thing in general that I think can be quite extraordinary if you let it sink in. And maybe this has occurred to others. I'm not claiming that I have unique insight here, because this is a very obvious thing, but I find it quite extraordinary. And it's this: everything that you've heard, let me put it this way, everything that I've heard that is crazy, nonsensical, doesn't fit, doesn't make sense, is suggestive of, at the very least, extreme incompetence from a body of law. Do we call them a Secret Service, law enforcement? What do we call them? Security? This is the most august security service in the world. These are supposed to be crack people who, if you've got the Secret Service behind you, if you're somewhere in public and the Secret Service is looking out for you, then you're supposed to feel really safe, because they're really good at their job. Or so we've always heard. And maybe it's always been. I think it seems that they've always been synonymous with not just competence, but extreme competence. It's true that JFK was shot, but I've also heard things about how their numbers were smaller than they were supposed to have been. That they were essentially, many of them were taken off the case, which of course is naturally pretty sus. But everything that's sus about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, is this is really something. Is what you're hearing about this stuff from mainstream media, because they can't not. First of all, they can't not cover the story, much as they may have wanted not to have to cover the story, because it paints Trump in a positive light, as somebody who, first of all, is getting shot at, and number two, escapes what some would have thought was certain death, and escapes triumphantly. That's not something that the mainstream media really wants to pay attention to. But how could they not pay attention to this story. It's spectacular. You know, it involves a high-profile person, someone who was once president, might be president again. You know, it's not something that they could just ignore or throw to the back page. This is front page news for days. I'm thinking. I mean, whatever front page news means, it's more of a connotative thing now than a literal thing, because of course most media is not physical anymore. But everything you hear about the story tells you that this is the Secret Service, at the very least, the Secret Service behaved with extreme and baffling incompetence. And failed to protect someone that they were supposed to protect. Now, even the most Trump-hating of media sites cannot help but reflect this, that he was not protected well by the group that was supposed to protect him, and that is supposed to be one of the most top-notch, one of the top-notch, you know, security in the world, with the exception of maybe Israel. And of course, October 7th, what happened, the security failure there that happened in Israel is also pretty sus, but that's a different story that I've covered elsewhere. But that didn't get as much coverage here in the United States, or in most of the Western world, as the attempted assassination of Trump did. So anyway, what you're finding in the, you know, is, why didn't, you know, you're reading these stories about they failed to secure the perimeter. They failed to, you know, you're in mainstream media, you're reading about how they did a job that was so bad, you know, and you're learning that this shooter, if he's the only shooter or not. I haven't read enough of the mainstream media to see if any of them are actually talking about more than one shooter. And I mean, I don't care to, but the things that, because the story has interested me, I've opened myself up more to hearing things about it than I do to a typical news story. And you're hearing from, you know, media venues, you're hearing from media outlets who are supposed to be saying, you know, it's stupid and ridiculous and asinine to be a conspiracy theorist. You know, that's their that is their default position, is we need to believe the people in authority. Of course, you know, except when it's when it's somebody in authority that they don't like, you know, like Putin or whatever. But you need to believe the neocon, neoliberal establishment and their take on the world, and to contemplate anything that would suggest that this establishment is capable of covering up terrible crimes, or doing terrible things, or just generally behaving in a psychopathically evil manner. If you think that, then you're portrayed as a kook. And yet these same venues have covered this event, and they can't help but make the normies who are paying attention think to themselves, something's not right here. Something is really not right here. Whether or not, and some normies like Trump, some normies don't like Trump, some normies are, just in the middle. But every normie, no normie can escape the things about this event that simply do not add up. So what's happened is in a way, something really extraordinary. It's the conspiracy theoristization. Boy, that's a clumsy phrasing. But anyway, you know what I mean. It's this the normie who's been trained to trust authority is now cannot help but hear that authority is really screwed up, and not just this isn't something where you could just say, oh well, shit happens. And I don't think newspapers and news outlets and what have you. I don't think any of them, even the most egregious among them, I don't think the New York Times or the Washington Post or from what I can tell anyway, I don't think even the most nauseatingly despicable of all of them, the BBC, I don't know which ones are worse, but the very worst, but some are definitely worse than others, and that's not letting others like Fox News off the hook either. But even with Fox News, it's like there's a range of acceptable opinion, and this is Fox News is like the extreme of how far you can go to the right and still be somewhat have somewhat acceptable opinions. Fox News, Daily Wire, whatever else, a few other places. But most of the media skews, really far to the left. And always has for a long time, but in the past, skewing to the left meant something different than what it means today. In the past, you could skew to the left and still have greater integrity than most news outlets have today, where it's just absolute, thoroughgoing, blatant propaganda, just base propaganda. It used to be more elegant and erudite propaganda. But these same outlets are now saying, this event was, it just doesn't add up. They say, this 20-year-old kid snuck in, didn't even sneak in. He was there in plain sight, and nobody did anything about him. Tons of people saw him climb up to the roof with his gun and sit there or lie there on the roof with his gun within sight of Trump giving his spiel, and authorities were alerted. Secret Service snipers, as I understand it, were even told, or even had their sights on him. Somebody with a gun who's not authorized to be in the vicinity, lying on top of a roof with the gun pointed towards the man that they're supposed to be protecting, and yet they didn't take the shot. They didn't take him out because they couldn't get authorization. I mean, how can you hear that? How can you hear that and not think they wanted him dead? This was complicity. This wasn't just a series of extremely incompetent Keystone Cops-esque performance by, again, the organization that's supposed to be the top flight security organization in the world. You can't watch it. I mean, I know that most of the mainstream media probably isn't saying there was, isn't saying, that they let him in, that they just let him in and allowed him to take his shots. But they are saying the obviously manifestly true thing, which is that he shouldn't. He was hanging around forever. He was seen doing many suspicious things that he shouldn't have been doing. He was never apprehended. No matter how much of the benefit of the doubt you give to the Secret Service, this could not just be a, oh well, shit happens, kind of thing. It can't be that way. And what you read in the mainstream media, or hear talked about in the mainstream media, you can't come away with that impression. You just can't. This is not just well, they did their best, but even the best, even the most competent people in the world sometimes mess up. You can't look at this and think it's just a fluke. You just can't. And I mean, I do wonder, I don't ascribe godlike powers to the authorities, to the deep state, to the powers that be. I mean, I think they obviously are evil and obviously have a lot of power, but they don't have godlike power. They can't. They can't control everything. But this is such a, I think this is an unintentional revelation of the method. There's the principle of revelation of the method. I've talked about that before. I won't repeat myself as far as what I think that's all about. In this case, though, it seems like the revelation of the method just emerged from the fact that from the facts on the ground. And here's the thing. Even if what had happened was actually carried out, even if they successfully took out Donald Trump, you still wouldn't. I mean, I think then these questions would be even more egregious because he would be dead, and it would be obvious to everyone that he was not protected. Unless the media just tried to cover it up. But I don't see how you can cover it up. It speaks for itself. And that was something that. So I'll just wrap up my remarks by saying, in the past, so-called conspiracy theorists got their relevant details. Sometimes they were inadvertently referred to in mainstream media, but most of the time you got these details from investigators who were not affiliated with mainstream media. This time, everything that looks sus about this event, you can source from mainstream media. You can footnote or endnote, or however it is that you're supposed to do it. You know, whatever the so-called proper way is to do it. You can cite official sources, you know, official mainstream media sources. I just think that's pretty incredible.